what we've really done is we've sort of laid the foundation. The exciting stuff comes today. Okay. But that's important to get that foundation down, because when we start looking at code, it's important to understand the basic commands, like the range command and some of the variations of that, and some of the XL downs and those kinds of things. It's important to have those things down, because when we start talking about if logic, we're going to start using the if logic, but we use all those commands in order to complete the if logic. If you don't understand those basic things, we won't focus on the if side. You're going to be focusing on the details, you see, and we don't want to talk about details. We want to just look at the logic. The code is growing, so we're going to be doing a lot of cut and pasting. And so once you understand the basic structure of the formulas and how these things are set up and the order and the indenting and all that stuff, then we can expand on into that. So operators. The assignments, this is how it works, is you can make an assignment here of variables like the ops equals, and this is like making a variable assignment. Arithmetic operations, you're going to do a plus, a minus, and these different commands to actually do it. Here's your logical statements, logical operators, which are your greater than, less than, equal to, and all that. And here's your not equal to. So those are all things we can use in the if statement to do those things. We're going to be doing a little bit of math, a little bit of operator, a little bit of if statements. We're going to say that if this is greater than this, then we want to multiply this. So we'll be doing a lot of multiplication along with the logical statements. This and an or is very important. This tells me that I want to include multiple cases. So if you might have several things you're looking at, I want to look at the salary range of a person, but I also want to look at their employment status. And so if both of those are true, then we want to do something. But if one of those is false, then we don't want to do it, and that would be an and operation. So I can say that if their salary is greater than $50,000, and if their status is equal to 2, then I want to do something. But if either one of those are false, so you can add the and operation in there to look at possible multiple conditions. So you might go through your Excel sheet and say, I'm looking for some information, but I want to make sure that certain things are included in this record. Well, you're going to have a loop statement that will look at every single line, and then think of Excel right now. And so we're looking at an if statement that would loop through the Excel sheet line by line by line, and the if statement could look at the record to make sure the record's complete. So in other words, if there are incomplete records, I want to know where those incomplete records are. Now the problem with this is this database is 10,000 lines long. And so I don't want to go through and sort and look for it this way. I could write a program to do that very quickly. And then when it's all done, it comes back with a little prompt and tells you what the problems are. Oh, line number 29 or line number 39 or something like that. And then you can actually write a little program to make sure that all the records have been completed. Here's the basic structure of the if statement, is that basically you have an if, you put a value here, and then you say that if that's equal to this value, if those are true, if that's true, then we want to do something here. But if it's not true, then it's just going to drop out. And so all we're looking for is just for the things that are true here and things that aren't true. Here's an or operator. So it looks like we have that right here. So what we're basically saying is that these two things have to be true. The name length has to be less than 8, and it has to be greater than 13. If either one of those are true, then we want to say it's going to be out of range. And the else statement here says, okay, what are the other possibilities? If this is true, if either one of these are true, then do this. So in other words, if it's between 8 and 13, then that's going to be false. So then it would drop out here and it would say, what other options do I have? And then it says it's in range. So if it's between 8 and 13, it's within range. If it's less than 8 or greater than 13, then it's out of range. And so there's your if, else, and then statement. Then what this does is it does an offset, and it simply goes down to the next row, and then you can run the program again. And since I think I'm using the active cell here, so I'm using the active cell right here, so wherever the cursor is where I'm going to actually start working on. And so that's just a little explanation of the code, of what the code actually goes through. Here's another real simple one here. If this value here is greater than 20,000, then we want to do this. If that's not true, then the else statement says do this instead. And then it simply drops out at that point. And so that's the basic logical structure of this when it just goes through the if, else, and then. If you don't have anything other on the alternative, then you just leave this out. You just say that I'm only looking for this, and then drop out at that point. And this is a nested if that simply goes to an if within an if. So this simply says there's the if statement here. If that's true, then do this. If that's not true, then do the else statement. But in this case, we're going to actually say, well, else, well, we have two more conditions. So you can put another if statement underneath the else statement. So that would be a nested if. So I can look for multiple conditions and have an answer for each condition. You could use this, but there is another way to do that. It's called the case select statement. And it's a little easier than doing a nested if. So if I have to look for 10, 15 values, you can see that your if statement gets pretty complicated. There's another function called the select case statement that is a little bit easier. It's more serial type thing. We'll get into that a little bit later too. All right, so let's go try some of these. Okay, just put some of these together. And this is where we can open up your document here and just sort of cut and paste this stuff. So I can take this code right here where it says sub, and we're going to open up this file first called logical if statement. So we'll start with that one, and then we're going to cut and paste this code and cut it into the Visual Basic Editor. Okay, so let's go over to Excel, file open, and we're going to open up our logical if statement. Logical if. Essentially what this is doing is we have these names here. So we're going to be doing some logical statements by looking at this field, and we're going to put the answer over here basically. And then we're going to go through this, we'll do some logical ifs here, and then we'll put the answer over here. And then we'll look some logical ifs on these and look at this number is a certain number, then we can do some structures on that. That's really all we're doing is just going through and looking for these. Let's go through and create one first without looking at the code. And that way when the sun comes back, we can jump back into the book. But let's go through and do this percent shipping. Okay? So essentially what I want to say that is that if the total is greater than a certain amount, then we want to give them free shipping. And we'll just give them free shipping equals yes. And so what we want to do is we'll start here, and then we will evaluate this cell here. So in order to do that, we're going to have to go a offset by a -2. So it would be 0, 2, 0, -2. So if we click our cursor right here, and the answer is going to go right there in the active cell. And so we can do our if statement says that if this is greater than 75,000, then we're going to, yes, this is going to be free shipping. Let's just go through and create that first. Go to our Visual Basic Editor, and we'll make sure that we're in the logical if workbook, and we're going to insert a module, and we can put in sub if test, and then hit the enter key, and that creates our module for us. And then we'll simply just say that if what? I want to come over here, and this is going to be your active cell right there. And so I can simply say that if the active cell, no, I can say the active cell. I can say active cell dot, but what I want to do is I want to pull this number here. So we have to put in offset of what? Of 0 in the row, and a -2 in the columns. So we want to come back 2 cells. I'm looking at this number right there. If the active cell dot value, if that value is greater than what? What did I say? 75,000. Then what? Then we want to put the
active cell value equals yes.
We want to give them free shipping, basically. I'll just say yes or no here. That's all we'll put, okay? So then we would say the active cell dot value is equal to what? Double quote? Yes. I was thinking something different, actually. I was thinking this was like give them, I don't know what says percent shipping. I think I was thinking yes, they will get shipping free or something like that, you know. I'll just put word free shipping. How's that sound? Free shipping. Do they get free shipping, yes or no? That's all. That's what I was thinking. I didn't see the reader wrong. So they're going to get free shipping if it's greater than 75,000, okay? And then you want to say, when we're all done, we want to say end if. So that's all we're saying is we're saying, yes, we want to give them free shipping. And then we're going to close our sub at the end. And we can run this to see if it's going to work. But then when we're all done, what we want to do is we want to go down 1 cell. Let's get this working, and then we'll put the no option in there in a minute. So then we're going to say active cell dot offset. Now we want to go down 1 cell. So we're going to say 1, 0 dot select. And that simply is going to go down from the active cell. It's going to go down 1 cell, and we're going to select the cell below it. So let's see if that's going to work. And I'll do my debug. Okay, so there's my if statement. So it should look over at, okay, so I'll do that. Okay, so this should say go over -2. So it should go over to H5 and evaluate that if that's greater than 75,000. In this case, it was not, so it dropped out. See, it just dropped out completely. It didn't even do the yes at all. And then it comes down and says, now we're doing offset. So this should go down 1. Then it went down 1. See? Then I can run the program again, and now it's going to evaluate the next line. So this says if it's greater than 75, which it is, it satisfied the if statement, and it puts the yes in there. And then it says end if, and then it drops out, and it says, oh, now go down to the next cell. And it drops down, and I can run the program again. So I keep running the program. If it matches it, then it's put a yes in there, and otherwise it's going to skip it. See? Now let's expand it a little bit more so that we want to put a no in there if they don't deserve free shipping. Okay, so I'll drop back to this one. We can put an else statement in here. Else what? We want to use the same code right here. and put in here no. So if it isn't true, then we're going to give them the no answer. There you go. So then we're going to say that if this value here is greater than 75, then say yes. If that's not true, then we're not going to give them free shipping. And then it's going to offset, and we can keep running this program over and over again, multiple times. Now, we could create a loop, but we're going to do loops in a minute. So right now, we're just going to run through it like this. And it's a no in there. It offsets, goes down 1, and now we're going to run it again. And it's going to put in the yes in there, of course. Yes, now this one here, it's going to put in a no, I think. And did the no. So it's going down each one. This is going to be another no. So it actually goes through each line item until it reaches the end, of course. So I'll just keep running through it. And it keeps going through each line item. And it drops down 1 cell each time. When we have a do loop, we're going to say if the current cell is blank, then drop out of the do loop. See? So we're going to actually drop out at that point. And we did a do loop yesterday, so let's do a do loop right now on this. And then we can actually apply that if we want. So we can take this whole code here, and we'll just delete this, so we start over. Now, the do loop, which we did yesterday, and I'm going to go back and find it. And this is the key, I think, in the do loops. If you use this on a regular basis, then that's one thing. But if you don't use it that much, then you need to go find some code that will actually do what you're looking for, and to kind of accomplish what you're trying to accomplish here. So I'm going to come down to my looping section. Okay, there's some more input boxes. Okay, here we go. This is the user input form. Okay, so here's our for loops. Let's use the same one that we did yesterday. So we just get from, I think it's pretty, I use it quite a bit, this particular routine. So we're looking for the counting. Here's your do loops. Okay, so we're going to look at it for a do loop that's going to accomplish what we need to. So this one here says do until this value is equal to null. So in this case, we can simply say that if the active cell is equal to null, then don't do it anymore. Just drop out of the do loop. So here's another one that's a little bit easier to read. This is exactly what we're looking for here, see? So do until the active cell value is equal to null. And that when it finds that blank cell, it's simply going to stop at that point. And here's your active cell offset that we just did a minute ago. It's already in there. So all we need is this and the loop at the end. So we need this at the top of the loop. So I'll cut that out. And we're going to put the word loop at the bottom underneath the code after this here. So we'll come back to Excel, go back to Visual Basic, and we're going to stick that code in right up at the top here. And we're going to simply do the loop. I'll put a couple of spaces in here so we can kind of see the logical structure of it better. And then down at the bottom here, we're going to put in the loop. Okay, so we have the do loops up here. It's going to continue looping until the active cell value is equal to null, and then it's going to simply keep walking through this step by step. So we're going to start with the active cell right here, and then we're going to, so I can see the whole thing, and I want to see this spot right there, and I'll run through this. And this is where I think all this sort of starts to come together because this is what we do a lot with Excel as we go through and look through our cells looking for things. So we know this is going to work, and for some reason it dropped out. Okay, so it says, oh, sorry about that. See, I didn't do that right. I made a mistake there, didn't I? Because the active cell is null, right? So drop out. Don't do the do loop anymore. But what I'm looking for is this one here is what I'm looking for. See? When that one is null, then it's going to drop out. Okay, and mistake there. So how do we fix that? So we're looking for the active cell value, but I don't want the active cell, do I? I want
The offset of the active cell.
Exactly. So I want this offset here, dot value. So I'm going to put this and then put dot value. So I'm going to stick that in there. So what I'm looking for is not the active cell, but the octet cell with a -2 on there. So I'm looking for this one. And then when this one is null, then we want to drop out. Okay? So there we go. So there is, it's going to put a no in there. And the indef, it's going to offset it down 1. And now it's going to loop back to see if, now it's going to go back and look again, says, okay, if H6 is null, which is not, then go ahead and do the logic. In this case, it's going to put a yes in there, and then loops again, and it says, okay, if, now it dropped down 1, and now if the active cell is, not the active cell, but the active cell offset is not null at this point, so it's going to keep putting the values in here. So I'll just keep hitting my debug until I get down towards the bottom a little bit more. Okay, we're getting close to the bottom, so I'm going to slow down a little bit. Okay, now that one there, it's going to loop again because the active cell offset is not null, so it will run the code again. And now it's going to loop back, and then it comes along and says, oh, wait a minute, but H14 is null now. So it drops out of the loop. Now it's dropping out of the subroutine. And so that's kind of the idea behind this. So that's kind of the idea of putting all this together. And this is what we do a lot of in terms of doing a do loop like this, going through the entire database, looking for some stuff. And you think about how long it takes to do that manually. If you just had to sort it to get the data in the right spot, that takes time. If you had a program that would just run through the entire database and look for information and give you answers, you see, maybe you can create a little field like this and identify the ones that are records that you need to be more concerned about. See it? So you can write a program that just says, okay, all these that are under 75,000, I want to sort these now and get all the no's at the top so I can look at those records. And so I won't have to go through and sort, try to find those records. I can actually write a program to give me a little identifier of which records are concerns or problem records or something like that. So you can identify the problem areas, and then you can focus on the problem areas rather than trying to sort and search and organize your data to be effective that way. Okay? So that's the idea. This one is using the OR operator. And so it looks like we're looking for this name length. And so it looks like we're going to put our cursor, let's see, where do we start at here? We're going to start in one of the names here. So I think we start in, looks like we're going to declare a variable here called name length. And that way we can just put the length of the characters in this variable. And then we're also going to have another variable called name description. And so this is going to be an integer, and this is going to be a description. So we can put that into a variable. It looks like when we're all done, we're going to put, see, we're going to gather the information, and we're going to plug these variables with the proper value. And when we're all done, we'll just simply say, well, whatever's in the variable is what we're going to be printing out. So that's essentially how that one works. Just the one, yeah, that's fine. I'll just cut that code out, and we can take a look at it. It says here, select B5 when we're ready. So we can just come to here, select B5. I'm going to go to Visual Basic and cut and paste this code right in here. Kind of clean it up a little bit so we can read the code a little bit better. So as you can see that I put in just a little condense here. This one could come back, this one could come back. So we got that. So we're going to go through and we're going to do our dimension here. We're going to establish our variables, two variables, and then look like we're going to define the name length of these characters. And so we're going to say, what is the length of the active cell, which happens to be B5? Once we define the name length here, we could actually cut and paste this code right here and put it here instead. So we don't necessarily have to have a variable for this, but you could just cut and paste the code. Let's go through and just run this to see if it's going to work, and then we'll go through and try to do it without variables to show you how you would actually accomplish that. I'm not sure if I would be able to actually, but I think so. Yeah. All right, so we'd have to change a little bit, but let's do it this way first. And so I'm going to simply run it to see, I'm on B5 right now, and it's going to put the answer, it looks like, over next to it here. So I'm going to do an F8 and walk through it. So declare them. It's going to say that what is the length of that. Now, if you look at the bottom of the screen, I have my local screen up, and so you'll be able to see these things. This is the advantage of using variables, is that you can actually see. Now, it looks like it put in 10 there. That's the variable length. And so then it came along and says, okay, now 10 is actually, does not fall within that range. So either one of those aren't true. So it's going to drop out to out of range. No, it within range, because it didn't fit in there. So it's yet past that one. So it's going to do an in range. And then you look at the name description on the bottom in the locals screen, it actually defined that. Then it says, now I want to print this, whatever's in the name description is what I want to print out. So then I would click it, I'd print it out there, and then I would go through and say, drop one cell down, and then we're going to do it again. So then we can do it again. This one here is out of range. So it's going to push it out of range, and then it drops out like this. And we go through another one. Out of range, in range, out of range, okay? So I'm going to get rid of that. Come back to this right now. Let's rewrite the code and take out the variables out of it completely. So that means that wherever we put this name length here, we have to cut and paste this code and put it everywhere it has the word name length. So I'll just put that there, and I'll put this one there, and that's the only place we use the name length. Right, so we have to cut and paste that code out here and put it everywhere the word name. So we don't need this one anymore, and we don't need this one anymore because we cut and paste this name length and put it right here. Now, so we don't need this anymore. So what we have to do, we can't define the name description anymore because we don't have the variable. So we have to actually just save it directly to the storage place. So down in here where we have this value here, we'd have to put this, and we'd have to copy this twice. So I'm going to put this one instead of the name description here, and then this one in terms of the name description here. So then I said that if one of these are true, then it's out of range. And so I'm going to put it directly in there. I'm not going to go through and store it in a variable anymore. I'm just going to put it where it's supposed to go, what the answer is. And this one here, if it's in range, I'm going to put it directly into the cell next to it, or A5 in this case. Now this one we don't need anymore because we just copied that up there. So that one can be commented out. And then we're going to offset the same way. You see, so we were able to do it the same code without variables. But the idea of that is we're actually running this program twice, this command twice, where up here we were running it just once and save it in the variable. So it was a little bit quicker. And so we're talking about a half of a millisecond versus a third of a millisecond. You know what I mean? I mean, there's not, still it's so quick that it doesn't really matter. The idea of that is efficiency is the key. If you do have a lot of code and it's running a lot, then you want to make sure it's as efficient as possible. And so you might resort to some variables to make it work more efficiently. And so you can see that I'm running this command twice, okay? And I'm running this command twice. So I'm running that command 4 times, where in the variables, I was running them just twice, see? Just the answers down the bottom down here. So it would take twice as long to run this in the current mode that we have it in. And I keep all these comments in here until I get it working. And so if I run this and see what it's going to do, okay, so then it comes back and says, if that falls within that range, then it's going to do within range. So it's actually going to put it directly into that cell, and then it simply goes back and says, okay, now offset. Then it comes back and says, if this next one is in range or out of range, then it's going to drop out of range in this case, and then it's going to drop out to the end if, and drop down to the next one. So see, I got it to work the same way without variables. But you can see that it's probably twice, it takes twice as long to run with the, and see, it didn't. Yeah, we don't have any code that tells me to stop at this point. You just have to stop running. So that's kind of the idea of variables. Like you could use variables or you could run them without variables. So either one works. So this is what I said, we can get through a lot of code and just kind of think through it a little bit more rather than trying to worry about all these commas and dots and negatives and all this type of stuff. And that would slow us down quite a bit. We can look at more code and kind of look at that.